All right, guys, if a picture, they say pictures are worth 1,000 words. If this picture could talk, I tell you, boy, this picture would tell you a story. The picture would tell you a story. This photograph, I chose it for a reason, but I don't know if you guys can figure out why. And why are these three in the picture together? I mean, clearly, they're there for a reason. Just look at the picture. Look directly at it, and the picture will tell you the truth. But I won't get into that. I want to talk about the promoting styles of Dana White and Scott Coker, okay? I want to talk about those promoting styles. I want to talk about, where one gains in one area and when one loses in another area and vice versa. Okay, Scott Coker, he's a promoter that he cares what his fighter thinks. Dana White's a promoter, he don't care what his fighter thinks. He cares what he thinks. There's a difference. Scott Coker and Dana White, they remind me of the tortoise and the hare. Where, you guys remember the story where the hare, passes the tortoise, hurry up and gets well ahead of the tortoise. And then the tortoise is so far behind, the hare decides to take a nap. And then when he wakes up, the tortoise had constantly and steadily finished the race. I look at Dana White and Scott Coker in that aspect. One person is aggressively, fastly moving towards change and, just being a trendsetter, while the other one is constantly reaching their goal. Dana White is an aggressive businessman, and he's only concerned about the bottom line. That's it. Dana White don't care about your feelings. He don't care about who died in your family. Dana White don't care. All he cares about is the bottom line. That's it. And if you're going to disturb his bottom line, he's going to get rid of you. He's going to make changes, or, he's going to figure out some kind of way to get you out of the way. That's how he thinks. Okay. That's how he's been his whole career. And he's had to be that way. And that's, you can understand why Dana White has amassed the kind of wealth that he's amassed. I looked at a Forbes rankings or whatever, and they say Dana makes about $20 million a year. I'd be willing to bet that he makes a lot more than that. I'd be willing to bet he makes a lot more than $20 million a year. But it's because he's been so aggressive, and he does what he does all because of the bottom line, and Dana White has been able to amass a lot of money. Where Scott Coker, his bottom line is not his goal in the beginning. That's not his goal. Yes, Scott Coker is going to make financial decisions that's going to try to make the business better. But his bottom line is more centered around the fighters. And I've noticed that about Scott Coker. Everything, his decisions are made, they're centered around fighters. It's not, him doing it because of the bottom line. Scott Coker makes decisions based on fighters. Now, in the beginning, you would think that this is probably a bad idea, but, in the long run, it's going to pay off for Scott Coker. I'm going to tell you, man, I criticize Scott Coker heavily, man. For the last 2 or 3 months, I've been criticizing him because I just kind of saw some things. I'm just like, why? Why are they doing that? When Scott Coker, when they went to DAZN, I never understood that. I just thought that was the worst decision ever, and it was. Because DAZN was a dying platform, and then you moved Bellator over to DAZN. It just didn't make any sense. It made no sense. The fighters would not get a lot of exposure at DAZN. So I questioned that decision. But, I felt like it was a decision he thought that would be best for fighters. Whereas, Dana White, he would have never done that. He would have never done that. The only way Dana White would have went to DAZN is if they can pay him a ridiculous amount of money. And Dana White would have had to have creative control. You see the difference in business styles. I see it differently like that. I see that, Dana White would have done something totally different. And you can see why Dana White and the UFC, they've been around for so long, because his visions, he always accomplished visions. And I think I did mention that Dana White is very aggressive. And I tell you, you can look at how these guys have their rosters. You notice Dana White, he'll keep somebody around with losses, but he'll let that person with a lot of losses just get in there and get their ass whooped. See, there's a purpose. There's a financial reason. I would sit there and say, dang, why is this person on the roster? Why is Jessica I still on the roster? Why is so-and-so on the roster? Well, he has a purpose for those people. Those purpose is for them to get their ass whooped. Guys, how many times have y'all seen a prospect beat up on somebody with a lot of losses? And they'll let that person with a lot of losses take some L's, and then they'll get him out. Dana White don't care, man. Them people who losing, he throw them to the wolves. He put them losers in there with, he threw them to the wolves, and either you gonna fight and you gonna live, or you gonna just fight and die. That's his mentality. But he will use those losers to help his prospects. And then he get rid of them. Dana White don't keep people on his roster. He don't keep, if there's a person with a lot of losses, and they just there, and they're not bringing any value, or they can't do anything. Like, if there's a person with a lot of losses, and if he actually think that they can beat a prospect, he's not gonna keep them around. He gonna get rid of them. There are some people with losses, man, that I thought were decent fighters. Now I sit and wonder, like, dang, okay, they're a good fighter, but why they let them go? And then when you start looking at the prospects, all the UFC prospects that's coming up, then, you know, I see the picture. Nah, he don't want his hot prospect getting beat by, you know, some, you know, good fighter who just can't win against elite competition. He don't want that. Whereas now, contrastly, Scott Coker, he keep guys around for a long, man, it take forever for Scott to cut people. Like, Scott done had people on that damn roster, man, for years, and they've been getting their ass whooped. I'm talking about for years upon years upon years, they've been getting the piss beat out of them. They've been getting the piss beat out of them. But Scott keep them around. He keep them around, I guess, man. He tried to give these fighters the benefit of the doubt. He tried to, you know, see that maybe they could win. I don't know. Scott just really believe in the fighter. I don't know if that's good for the bottom line. I don't know. And two, you know, you look at the average age, man. You know, you look at the age, like the UFC, Dana White don't keep a lot of old guys around, man. Dana White not for that. If you even look like you past your prime and you can't perform, he gonna get you out of there. Where Scott Coker, hey, man, Bellator is a damn retirement home over there, man. It's a damn retirement home. But here's the thing, though. Dana White always wonders, though, why his fighters don't respect him. Well, they don't respect you because, you know, you dog them out on national TV in front of the world. And Dana White do that. Now, Scott Coker don't do that. And fighters, they love and they respect. They really respect Scott Coker. They love him. I had a female fighter, man, I was interviewing like a couple of years ago, behind the scenes. And she bust out into tears, man, when she talked about what Scott did for her. Like, Scott came out of his pocket and helped out a situation, bad situation. But that's the kind of guy Scott is. That's who he is. He's going to help the fighter. So the fighters, they love Scott Coker. And even some of these fighters, man, they loyal to him. Like, you know how we used to always wonder in boxing, why these guys so loyal to Al Haymon? Like, why? Well, it's for the same reason. You know, Al Haymon done paid bills. Al Haymon done got these guys, you know, to help some of their families. Al Haymon done paid bills. Like, that's why guys love Al Haymon, and that's why even they'll stay with him, even for less money. And I used to always wonder, it just appears that Bellator fighters don't make as much money as the UFC. But they loyal to Scott because Scott does a lot of stuff behind the scenes for these fighters. And I can respect that, and they respect him. Now, I'm going to tell you, that goes a long way. Because if Scott ever get off into, like, a couple of ventures, man, when he want to, you know, expand his business, and you got a lot of fighters that you took care of, and then when they get out, see, Scott can go back and use those people, man, for whatever he need them for. You see, you're setting up, I see his end vision, man. I see his end vision. Do you think what Chris Cyborg doing with Bellator, do you think that Chris Cyborg going to work with Scott Coker? Or do you think that she going to just go away off into the sunset? I guarantee you, Scott Coker got ideas for Chris Cyborg. Now, one fighter, the only fighter that I disagree with, where I feel like Scott Coker kind of did her dirty, man, I feel like Julia Budd. And I'm not sure, I don't think, from what I know, he didn't re-sign Julia Budd. Okay, this is what I've heard. But I don't know, maybe they're working on a deal to figure something out. I don't know. I don't know if Julia Budd's resigned. Somebody in the comment section, y'all can fact check me, okay? That's it. But for the most part, Scott Coker, his fighters, they admire him and they want to fight for him. Whereas you got a lot of fighters, man. You have people making good money in the UFC that they be like, release me. Like, guys, it's fighters who in the UFC, they be saying, man, just go on and release me. Because they get tired of the BS, man. They get tired, like, you come in, man, you have your you know, you're supposed to be professional, man. You're supposed to be real professional, but then you have your CEO of the UFC, you know, dog you out because he didn't like the way you fought, but you getting in there and you can, you know, risk serious injury, you know, serious brain damage. I mean, all that stuff, man. It's just a lot of stuff that could happen to you. And you going in fighting the best you can so you can go home to your family as well. And, you know, you have somebody criticize you, man. You done, you know, your shins are hurting, man. Your face hurt. Your arm hurt. I mean, everything hurting on you. But then you have this bald-headed asshole, sit back and he criticizing the hell out of you and doing it, trying to destroy your brand in front of the world. You ever notice when Scott Coker don't like a fight, he don't dog the fighters out. He'll just say it wasn't entertaining, but the fighters, definitely they'll go back and make some corrections. And, they'll be more entertaining on the next bout. But these are good fighters. Scott Coker will always inject positivity into his fighters. And that's key. That's key. That's key because you're not going to have a lot of fighters that revolt against Scott Coker and just, want to walk out. It's a lot of fighters in the UFC, man. It's a lot of them guys that really don't want to be there. But they dare because the pay is good. And some people just said, the hell with the pay. The hell what I'm getting, man. Just let me out of my contract, and they want to go elsewhere. But Dana White has built that toxic. He's built that toxicity. He's built that because that's who he is. He's very toxic. Very toxic. In that aspect, I think Scott Coker has the better style. Financially, I think Dana White will do a lot better. I think Scott Coker, will do better. I just think that Scott, sometimes, man, he gotta be a bit more aggressive, man, when it comes to certain things. Now, one thing that's a pro and con, Dana White will listen to the fans. There's one thing when it comes to fights and getting fights, Dana White listens to the fans. Whereas Scott Coker, I feel like he really don't listen to the fans. They just put bouts on. When you ever look at a Bellator event, do you ever look at the event and then you just wonder, like, damn, like they just threw this together. It looked like they just threw this together. Like, who create these cards? Who creates these matchups? And for years we've been screaming that at Bellator, we want more female matchups, okay? And finally this year, we had a card where there was, I think, 3 female fights. We were screaming, man, for 8, 9 months, or no, maybe 6, 7 months, that we wanted Denise Kielholtz to get this title shot, man. We were screaming for it, screaming, and we wanted it. And so finally, we got what we asked for. Scott Coker, after all this time, he's finally listening to the fans. Dana White has always done that. I give Dana White props, man. If the fans have a request, if it's something that we want to see, if it's something that we really, truly want to see, Dana White will make those fights happen, okay? You better believe, like we were calling for Nunes and Shevchenko, guess what? He made it happen. We were calling for Nunes and Cyborg, he'll make that happen. The only fight that Dana White just said the hell with it was Cyborg Nunes 2. He wanted no parts of that. And he pretty much just wanted Chris Cyborg out the UFC. I'll probably say that's the only fight right now that Dana White hasn't, really got in there and said, nope, this fight gonna happen. I don't care what happened. And we're still waiting on the John Jones and Ngannou fight. But I'm pretty optimistic that Dana White is going to find a way to get that deal done. I'm pretty sure. Scott Coker has to do more of listening to the fans. He has to. If not, your business is not gonna thrive. Like, we used to call for fights at Bellator, and then we see the Bellator cards, and man, we got some of these crazy fights, and I'm like, man, these matchups are not even competitive. And that's another thing. I think the matchups in the UFC, I think they do a better matchmaking job of the best fighting the best. I think they do a much better matchup job in fighting the best. Also, let's talk about convenience, okay? Let's talk about convenience. Dana White has made it his effort and his goal to make sure that the Americans here in the USA, we're able to have access to fights, and we can watch the fights at a decent time. Of course, we're based out of here in America, so what it is that we get to watch the fights that we want to see. We get to watch these fights, and we get to watch the fights at decent hours, and if we want to even go to an event, there's so many events spread out across the USA, there's no excuse why you can't make an event. And Dana White will have an event in any city, okay? He'll do it anywhere, and I can appreciate that. Bellator, they're not so, USA friendly. And at some point in time, Scott, we got to get out the Mohegan Sun, okay? We got to get the hell out the Mohegan Sun, and we got to move around. Because I think what's happening with Bellator is that their American base is not there, like the UFC. The UFC, they go overseas, they do stuff, but most of the fights in the UFC, they're going to be in America, okay? And Scott, you're American, you speak English, you're American, and you have a lot of fighters, you got some foreign fighters, but I feel like Bellator caters more towards overseas European market. I feel like, because he was talking about his last press conference, talking about going to Italy. And, I'm sitting in Italy, man, we need some Bellator bouts right here in the good old US of A. And I'm talking about, man, get the hell out the Mohegan Sun, man. Let's go to Texas. Let's go to the East Coast, the West Coast. Let's go up north. Let's do some bouts up there, and let's be consistent doing those bouts up there. But I just feel like Scott just want to, I don't know, man. He just really wants to cater to that overseas market, and that's probably been a reason why it's not working as fast as he wants it to. Now he's got the deal with CBS and Showtime. He's got that. That's great. Okay, he got that deal with CBS and Showtime. I mean, it's a great deal. But you gotta really promote to the Americans. And you ever notice, man, when a Bellator event come up, you just kind of find out about it. Like, you really don't know a whole lot unless if you got CBS Showtime. Even then, they still don't really promote the fights. You may see, like in a month, you might see one Bellator commercial. You might see one. The UFC, you got ESPN? Even on local, I even seen a UFC promotion on regular TV. But the UFC, they constantly keep the bouts in your mind. On ESPN, you watching First Take. In between commercials, they have the UFC gonna be fighting on this day, this day, this day. Bellator, you find out about it if you happen to be like rolling with a fighter on social media. Like if you rolling with this particular fighter, you just happen to see what they doing, and there some of those fighters will put like a poster up. And then you'll know that, oh, okay, well, Bellator got something going on, okay. But it's like you find out about it last minute. And also, too, and I'm going to end this with this, the UFC's times are very, very good. They make the times for pay-per-views convenient. And the day of the week on Saturday. See, that's convenient. And I understand that Bellator and the UFC, they got to share Saturday on some nights. So I know that sometimes Bellator can't do a Saturday card. But they could do like a morning, like on Saturday. They can go in the morning. Like take the first half of that day, do a Bellator card, and then when the UFCs, have to fight overseas, then go ahead and do an evening card. But I just think fights on Fridays, man, it's just, some people, they're still working, man, and they're not able to get home in time. It's a lot of stuff, man. See, Saturdays, people sitting at home, they with their family. Friday, you get home, most people get home 5:30, 6. You gotta, if you got kids, you gotta entertain them and do what you gotta do. And, it's hard, man. It's really hard on a Friday. And sometimes Bellator don't have events on Thursdays. And Thursdays, that's it. I'm done. You can't get me on a Thursday evening for a Bellator. It's just not going to happen. And if people are busy like I am all the time, you're not going to be able to watch no Thursday event. You'll catch the replay. And people don't even I don't like catching replays. I like to see it when it happens. So, I mean, Bellator got some pros and cons. The UFC got some pros and cons. I feel like, though, the business model for the UFC, I feel like they've got more pros than Bellator, and I feel like it's the better model. And I'm not saying Scott Coker needs to, be just like the UFC, but I'm saying if Scott Coker could adopt some of the approaches while still being, fighter friendly, I think Scott Coker can actually, really get ahead in the game.